G'day, I'm Warwick Schiller, back with another video about marginal gains. And so if you haven't seen the first one, go back and look up on the marginal gains. But in short, marginal gains was a term started by a fellow named Sir Dave Brailsford, and he was an English cyclist, and he turned around the whole English cycling team, where they went from not having won an Olympic medal for 80-something years to winning, I don't know, 7 out of 10 available gold medals at the next Olympics. And it's all about doing little things that on their own don't seem much, but if you can do a lot of these little things on their own, they'll add up to some huge changes. And one of the things that Sir Dave Brailsford had the team do, because cycling is an aerobic endeavor, was he had the team wash their hands a lot, okay, because you can get germs on your hands. And how do you get a cold? How do you get sick? How do you get problems with your lungs from being sick? Is from germs from your hands. So he had them wash their hands. And I think when they went to their first Olympics, he banned them from shaking hands with people, okay? And at no point in time in history are we more aware of the benefits of not getting germs as we are right now. And if you think about these masks right here, what we are doing with these masks, there's two things you can do. You can either wear a mask and prevent yourself from getting COVID, or you can not wear the mask, get COVID, have to go to hospital, be very, very sick, be on a ventilator, be ventilated, which is not a pleasant experience. And then, and I have never been ventilated, but I've heard from people who have been, it's not a cool experience. You spend the rest of your life with that as part of the trauma that you carry around. And the horse thing I want to talk about here in relation to this is tying up. You know, people have a lot of times people have trouble with horses tying up because they had trouble with their first tying up experience. And I have probably my marginal gains for tying up, and I've got some videos on here about tying up, but I basically have 3 criteria before I ever tie a horse up. They've got to be able to do 3 things. One is they've got to respond very well to the pressure of the lead rope. In case when they are tied up, they walk along and hit the end of the lead rope, they've got to get off that. Number 2 is they've got to be, their startle reflex about things has to be pretty low. They can't be spooking at things. And number 3 is I don't ever tie a horse up before they can stand still perfectly well. I don't teach a horse to tie up in order to teach them to stand still. I teach them to stand still in order to teach them to tie up, because, you know, if you followed the principles of training, one of the principles of training is they need to know the answer before you ask the question. And, you know, if you tie a horse up before he knows how to do those 3 things, not startle easily, respond to pressure on the halter, and number 3, be able to stand still. If you don't have all those 3 things working before you tie a horse up, and they get you tie them up and they get a spook and they pull back. Not only when they pull back, can you cause irreparable damage to them physically, but there's that mental thing. I mean, I hope no one watching this has ever had it happen, but if someone was ever kidnapped by a hostile person and bound up, which would be just horrific, to where you're struggling to get away and you can't, that's the position a horse is in if they are tied up and pulled back. They're not, you know, they're not being stupid and they're not being bad or whatever. They are in complete panic mode and they're trying to get away from something that scares the heck out of them, and now they can't. And that's some trauma that will be a part of every single thing they do for the rest of their life, especially tying up. It can have a lot to do with problems trailer loading, but just have a lot to do with general trust issues with people as well. So that's part of tying up. And the other part of tying up, once they can tie up, is I make sure I never tie a horse up to do something that they aren't perfectly good at not tied up. This includes picking up their feet, putting on a blanket, saddling, brushing, grooming, washing, hosing, veterinary. Doesn't make, you know, if your horse is slightly concerned about you doing something to them and then you tie them up and you eliminate their ability to flee from that, Now you're getting into panic stations, okay? So, and if you tie a horse up and do something to them that for the first time they've never had done before, you do it while they're tied up, let's say hosing them. So you tie them up, they're not good with hosing, they're not good with tying, and then you hose them and they pull back and they have this traumatic experience, it's attached to their first hosing. And so now being hosed with water brings up things. If you know, we've all got, all us humans have our traumas, and if you think back about your own personal trauma, because we've all got some, if you think about situations that trigger that, you don't have to have it happening to relive that thing. And I think it's the same with horses. I mean, we're all mammals, we all have the same nervous system, and so yeah, I'm really, really big on avoiding trauma being tied up. Okay, that's, for me, that's a huge one. It's really hard to undo that stuff, and it really gets in the way of a lot of really positive experiences you can have with your horse. I just really, it's really like marginal gains. This whole marginal gains thing is, sometimes you're doing things that add up, help you. This one is doing things so things don't hinder you. You know, it's not. This is not the making sure they can tie up before you tie them up is not necessarily, you know, adding a lot to their experience. It's ensuring you don't have bad experiences. And like I said, this thing right here, we're so used to, who's watched TV lately and you see people, you know, you're watching a movie and people walk into a room and hug other people, and or they're walking along the street and they're walking past people and no one's wearing masks, and it's kind of like, whoa, that's so 2019 sort of thing. So we've become really, I don't know if the word is comfortable with these things. I wear glasses, so my glasses fog up all the time, so they still annoy me that way. But if you think about it, you can do this, or you can experience being in a hospital on a respirator. And if you've ever, when this pandemic first happened, there was a Netflix documentary called Pandemic, and it showed people in India in hospitals who have been respirated. And you know, the United Nations or whoever it is banned governments from waterboarding say terror suspects and stuff like that, you know, probably 10 years ago, because it is so terrifying. When you are struggling for your breath and you're being respirated, it's not that far different. And so, you know, taking small steps can certainly help avoid some terrifying situations that live with you forever. And tying up, for me, is really, really one of those. I mean, it's a huge part of having a horse that is very, very mentally well-rounded without any skeletons in the closet. So I know that was a long old speech, but I feel very strongly about the whole tying up thing. Like I said, preparing them to be tied up, and like I said, I've got videos on here about that, but also making sure you don't do things to them tied up that they cannot do perfectly well. And that's probably, for me, that's a marginal gain right there. A huge one is make sure you don't ever do something with a horse tied up that you know that they're totally comfortable with when they're not tied up, and that'll save you so much heartache with your horse. It's not funny. So anyway, hope that helps. We'll catch you guys next time.